Okay, this is an updated version of the pumpkin hat video I have on my channel. So I'm going to be using the red Nifty Knitter loom. This one has 31 pegs in the round. It came in a set of 4, which there was a blue one that was smaller, then a green one, and then a yellow one. This one is typically the one you'd probably use for small babies, or you'd be using for like a very, very small like toddler or something like that. So we're going to use this to make an updated version of it. And the yarn I'm going to be using, one of the yarns, is this nice fuzzy yarn. My daughter actually picked it out, and I still, miraculously, still have the little cover that came with it. So this is what it is. It's a Lion brand yarn, Chanel, and I'm wondering if it says the color. Oh, terracotta. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can zoom in. I think I'm saying it right. Ooh, it doesn't want to zoom. It's a terracotta yarn. I'll write the type of yarn right there for you guys of what it says. I believe it's terracotta. I'm just not sure if I'm saying it right. But again, it's a Lion brand yarn, Chanel. And you can see if you can find some, at your local craft store if you want to use the same yarn. But if you can't, it's a bulky yarn. It's fuzzy, so you're going to want something similar to that. You're also going to want a little bit of some green yarn to use for the stem that we'll add on to later. And you'll want a row counter that will help you out too, so you can keep track of what you're doing and how many rows you've done. Now, I'm not sure if you could tell, but I have stitch markers in different spots on that. This is because I'm going to do like kind of like ridges a little bit to give it a little more pumpkin shape. Now, they're not perfectly lined up, like they're not in perfect, quadrant, you want to say, because this is an uneven peg loom, so I kind of had to adjust it a little bit. But just like pumpkins that come in different shapes and sizes, it's not going to mess with the design too much, and it'll just give it a little different quirk. So what I have is stitch markers placed around the loom, and we'll explain why these are going to be for where we purl. The rest of the time, we're just going to do a U-knit. The reason I'm doing the U-knit is because it's a little tighter than the E-wrap knit, considering we're using this one strand of bulky yarn, and the Nifty Knitter loom has such a wide gauge. So this is where the U-knit will be more helpful than doing the E-wrap knit. Again, if you use a different type of yarn, you may need to decide to change what knit stitch you do. You may decide you like the E-wrap or the flat or the U, but again, it's all depending on what type of yarn you use. But because we're using this bulky yarn, which is a weight of 6, I believe. Let me check real quick. I believe it's a weight of 6. Oh, it's bulky 5. Sorry, it's a weight of bulky 5. We're going to do the U-knit. The first thing I'm going to do is the cast on. What I want to do for the cast on this time is I'm going to do the figure 8 cast on. So you do your little slip knot, and then you're going to place it on the first peg. Don't worry about these stitch markers. I'll just have them on there for figuring it out. We'll be using them later. So place it on your first peg here. You can choose to wrap this as you go, or you can choose to work this tail in later. I'm actually going to work it as we go. Let's try that again. Sorry for that. It was just not cooperating. It's been a while since I've actually worked with my looms. So you're going to have it come out the first peg. You're going to go to the next peg. Again, deciding whether you want to hold both strands at once or if you want to leave the tail for working in later. Then you're going to go behind the next peg, come in front of it, go around it, go back around the first one till it looks like this. Now keep in mind, I doubled them. I was holding on to the tail, so I'm only needing to move over this one. That's the only one that really actually has 2 loops. Now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to work from the back, go to the next peg, come around in front, wrap it around, come back around, and then you're going to just knit this one over. Again, you're going to do that whole process working around the loom. And again, once you ran out of your tail, then you're just back to the strand itself. Take it off of that, come to the next peg that's empty, wrap it around, go in the back of the other one, turn on the front. I have a video about the figure 8 cast on, so you might want to go check that out if you're having trouble with it. And then just knit that one over. Go to the next and do the same thing. And I know with using this orange on the red, it may be a little hard to see. That's why I'm trying to hold it a little closer to what we're doing here. So again, you have your working yarn. You're going to come back around the next one that needs to, wrap around it to the back, go behind that first one you did, around it to the back, and then knit this over. Okay, so continue doing that until you get all the way back to the beginning. Now what we're going to do is, this is where the stitch markers come into play, and they may be, again, a little hard to see because of this yarn. What I did is I placed 2 here, right underneath these pegs. But wherever these pegs or stitch markers are, we're going to end up purling. So I'm going to first explain that you're going to have 2 stitch markers here, then go 1, 2, 3, 4 pegs, put 2 more stitch markers, then again go 1, 2, 3, and then on this one, on number 4, put a stitch marker, place another stitch marker, then 1, 2, 3 empty spaces, and then another 2 stitch markers, and then 1, 2, 3, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 more stitch markers, then 1, 2, 3, 2 more stitch markers, 1, 2, 3, and then we get to that one. So again, the first set has the 4 before you drop them, and again, that's the only part that's going to be a little off, because again, this is not an even number peg loom. It's got 31 pegs, so I had to alternate a little bit. So wherever those stitch markers are, you're going to purl. Wherever they're not, we're going to do, we're going to do the U-knit. So again, this is coming off here. We're going to, since it's coming off this because of our figure 8, we're going to purl on this end peg. Sorry, I forgot that doing the figure 8, you're going to end weird. So go ahead and do the purl where the stitch markers are, which is on this one, and on the next first peg. Again, we take the yarn through and just go ahead and purl. Okay. Then when you get to the pegs that don't have a stitch marker, do the U-knit, which is basically taking the yarn and you're just going just gently like that with it, and then taking and knitting the bottom loop over. So again, you come to the next peg, working yarns in front, just around it gently, and then knit over. I also have a video about the comparison of the U-knit, the E-wrap, the flat knit, and the true knit if you want to check that out. So again, the next peg that doesn't have a stitch marker, just gently U-wrap. Don't hold the yarn too tight, otherwise it'll make it tight the next time. And you're just going to keep doing that process of the U-knit, and then we get again to the stitch marker pegs. We're going to purl. I mean, this yarn is a little silky, so it's a little slippery, but you just do your little purl, take it off the peg, put it on the peg for those 2. That's what I like about using stitch markers. Now we go back again to doing the U-knit. Now back to purl. U-knit. And once you get a rhythm down, it's not too bad. And again, just remember, don't hold the yarn too tight because then it might make it hard to knit over the next time. Again, the stitch markers are here, so we're going to purl again. And we're just continuing this till we get all the way back to the start. Okay, now that we're getting back to the beginning, we're just going to continue this till we do this many rows before we move on to adding the green and finishing off the hat. So again, we're just going to keep this very simple of this pattern for this many rows right here, and then we'll come back and we'll do the next part of the green and ending it. So after completing the 27 rows, following the stitch markers and the knitting and the purling, again knitting in the U-knit, we're going to now change over to the green we need to be the little part that we have before we put the stem on. So we're going to take, and I'm just going to cut a tail of this, and I'm going to simply attach one strand of worsted weight yarn in green. Now, just a heads up, we're going to be doing a different knit stitch with this yarn because it is a lot, it's thinner than the orange we had on there, but I didn't want to have to double this up, so it'll make it a little easier when we go to bind it off. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little tail of the orange, and I'm going to tie this to it. There are other methods for putting stuff on there. I just didn't want to, run the risk of messing it up when it's already on the loom. Now again, when we come to this end, I'm taking it off before we do this peg here so that the green will take over. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to tie it as close to the pegs as you can. Like I'm going down in, I want it to be as close to the pegs as I can when I tie it. So see, I'm going to tie it right in there. Sometimes I double knot it. You can choose later to trim these ends or to hide them in the yarn. I'm going to give them a little trim now. Okay, as you can see, it's tight enough that it's not going to come off. But just be careful not to cut the tail too short. I may have cut this a little short, but it does look like it's not going to come off. Now we have the one strand, so we're going to still do our purling where the stitch markers are. We're still going to do knitting, but we're going to do the flat knit this time instead of doing the actual, the actual U-knit. So I'm going to come up here, we're going to do the purl, again on the pegs that have the stitch markers. But this time you're going to lay the working yarn in front, okay, because this is the flat knit. You're going to lay it in front. Don't make it too tight, otherwise the next time you go around it could be tight. So you're going to gently lay it in the front, and then go ahead and knit over. Until you get to the next stitch marker. And then again, when you hit the stitch markers, go back to doing the purl. And then again, when you get to the parts with no stitch markers, just lay your working yarn on top of the loops that are already on there and gently knit over. Watching the tension that you have on it. So again, go ahead and continue doing this going around for this many rows right here. Again, remembering to do the flat knit on the pegs that don't have the stitch markers, and again, still doing the purl on the ones that do. After completing the 6 rows, we're going to go ahead and take this off the loom. I want to take a minute to show you what it looks like on this side. Again, because this is a fuzzy yarn, you can't, the definition of the purling and the knitting is a little hard to see on camera. At least you can see it a little more better when it's done in person. But again, if you change out the type of yarn you use, it obviously will show up a little more. So just keep that in mind, that the yarn that you use will play into how the definition of the two different stitches will look. But we did 6 rows of that, and now we're getting ready to take it off. I'm going to just do the simple gathered bind off. I'm going to cut and leave a tail on the project. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take another long piece of yarn, and we're going to use this part for doing the stitch. So we want to go ahead and we want to actually do, I usually say to make sure you have more than enough, so I'm always like, do a little extra, a couple feet or 24 inches or so, just to make sure you have enough. You don't want to run out. And then cut it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use our looming tool, and we're going to take the yarn that we cut to use, and we're just going to hold this one. We don't want it to like go away. And then we're going to lay this one beside it. Using our looming tool, we're going to go down through the loop that we have on there, and we're going to bring our extra tail yarn all the way through, again holding onto this tail so it doesn't go away. Bring that all the way through, go the next, do the same thing, work that one yarn all the way through, and as you're working around, if you want, you can choose to take the ones you've already done that to off their pegs, and if they're ones that have these stitch markers, you can just go ahead and move them off too. But again, keeping an eye on your two tails here so you don't lose that, just kind of gently hang on to them, or put your thumb on it so it doesn't move, and you're going to just work right around the loom, doing the same thing all the way around, just pulling that working yarn all the way through that we cut. So go ahead and continue this, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of this row. We're getting to our last little peg here that we have to work the yarn through. So go ahead and do that last loop through. Gently take them off the pegs. Remove your loom. Now we're going to turn, before we close this off, we're going to turn the hat inside out because I like to be able to close it off on the inside. So go ahead and turn it around. Now grabbing your working strands, go ahead and gently pull the hat closed. Just gently pulling on the strings. Until you get it as closed up as you can. You'll be able to kind of put your hand through and be able to see if it's kind of still poking through. But again, you want to close it off as tight as you can. Grab a crochet hook. And what I usually like to do, after I get it closed off as much as I can, is I usually like to tie these together. In one spot. Then grab one of the tails, go on the opposite side of the project, find a loop, take one of your working tails and put it through. And then taking the two strands of yarn again, go ahead and tie it. Now you don't have to put as much tying here. We're going to be adding a little stem to this, so we want to just we don't want too many knots in our way for that. But again, you're going until it closes up enough. And I don't know if you can see that my finger's inside. You can't see my finger because this is actually closed off. So go ahead and just take all your strands one more time. Give them all a quick tie together. And then give it a little trim. And now turn your hat back the right side in. Or right side out, I guess. Okay. And this is what it's going to look like. I mean, like I said, you can't see the definition as much, and I apologize for that, but you can kind of see where the knitting and the purling took place. It's a really cute, fuzzy hat. And all we have to do now is make a quick little stem to put there for our little pumpkin hat. To do the stem, we're going to actually do an I-cord on this loom as well. Now, in my other pumpkin hat video that I did, I actually used a spool loom and did a little tutorial, or to have a little tutorial on that. But I wanted to use this one so that way the project is all done pretty much using one loom instead of having to switch out your looms. Now you're going to make your slip knot like normal. This time don't have so much of a little tail on it. And then all you need is 3 pegs on your loom. Now it might be a slightly different I-cord method. It's just basically we just want a little piece of yarn that we can attach to the top of the hat. So you're going to wrap 3 pegs. Bring your yarn around the front. Oops, sorry, I'm getting in the shadow here, I apologize. Bring it back around the front so it lays in front of them. Excuse me, oh wait, I forgot to tell you. Grab your tail actually this time. Let's undo this here. Make sure you grab all the yarn so that way it kind of hides that tail a little bit. And now come all the way around, bring it right back in front and knit the bottom over the top. Just regular, like kind of flat knitting. You can hide your tails later if they don't cooperate by hiding. Then all you're going to do is with that yarn from the back, come around the 3 pegs you have, and then come right around the front. And then just knit over. This will give a little different looking of a tail than in my other video. And that's all you're going to do for the process. You're just going to keep going around. If you have a tail left, just kind of give that a little tug. We'll hide that later. And just keep kind of working it right around until you get the length of the stem that you like. I'm not going to keep track of how many rows I'm doing. I'm just going to keep going until I get the length, roughly what I want. And that's all I'm doing is I'm rewrapping it around and then just knitting it over. So I'm going to go keep doing this and I'll come right back when I get it the length that I want. Once you get it down how far you want, again I just did a little tail and we'll worry about this part after, once we take it off. And again, it's just going to be as long as you want it. It's not that long, it's probably a couple inches. Again, you could do it shorter or longer. It's pretty much up to you. When you're ready to take this off, we're just going to do like a knit bind off. We're going to rewrap this peg, knit it over. We're going to move it to the middle. We're going to knit it over. I'm going to come over here, we're just going to knit this one. And then we're going to move it to the middle. There are different ways of taking this off. This is just what I'm choosing to do at this moment. And then knit the whole that over. Now cut your working yarn that's right here. Give yourself a couple inches because you're going to be using that to help tie on the inside. Now take this and just lay it back in front of the peg. Go in and just bring it right out just as if we were doing a bind off here. Take it off the loom. You can kind of give it a little tug. And now you have a little I-cord that we're going to use to put on the top of our pumpkin. Okay, so we got these two strands. Now you have two choices. You could turn around and go like this, fold it in half, use these two to tie, and then you'll end up with more like a loop for a stem versus an actual stem. You can choose to just, take one side and with a crochet hook, you can kind of work the tail end of one just to kind of hide it in the project a little more. Or if you go ahead and you like tie it off, come here. Wow, that's not really liking me tonight, is it? Okay, let's try that again. Just kind of tie it off. I don't know why it frayed on me like it did. Okay. Let me go off camera real quick and tie that. All I want is a simple knot and it's not cooperating. Okay, so just kind of put a little knot on the end of it, which I know you can't see. Okay, but I got it to finally work through the loop. Get a tug, and then you can kind of take care of the excess, as long as it's not going to come apart. And then your little tail, go ahead and just kind of work it into the stem, so it kind of hides it with the crochet hook. Again, if my yarn wouldn't have frayed, it wouldn't look as bad as it does right now. So again, keep that in mind. If your yarn isn't fraying, it would look better. And then once you get it hidden some, just go ahead and retrim it to get it kind of looking a little better as a stem. And then we're going to take the other end. Again, using our crochet hook, go into the project, bring your crochet hook up through the top of the hat in a spot as close to the center where we did it, which I know is a little hard to see. Grab the working yarn, pull it through so it comes out in the inside. And now this is where you're going to go ahead, and because you have this, and because you have your little tails here left over, I don't know if you can see that, we have the little tails left over, you can actually go ahead and take these two and tie it together. Now that's why I would say I should have left those tails a little longer, but I'm just going to simply tie it, those two together. Now I'm going to come back around the front and I'm going to say, okay, I need to kind of weave it in more because it's actually kind of hanging a little more. But we're going to go ahead and we'll cut ourselves, oh, excuse me, we're not going to cut ourselves. Let me see. We're going to go back to this long strand that we have and we're going to bring it back out the front. So we're going to go on the opposite side and we're going to grab our tail from the inside. I just realized I am not left-handed, so I don't know why I did it that way. Okay, so we're going to go on the inside with the tail we had from the hat, or from the stem, and bring it back out the front. Okay, so it's coming. I know it's a little hard to see with the color. Bring it back out the front. Now you're going to find the base of your stem, and you're going to work it through that. So you're going to come up a little bit in the stem, and you're going to bring that tail up, and put it right through the project. Okay, and then go to the other side of the stem. Do the same thing. Pick a spot that's up the stem a little bit. Bring it through. My goodness. Like my yarn is fraying a little more than me. Okay. Once you got it kind of at the top, go back and put it through the bottom again. Like we were doing before, like when we worked it to the bottom again. Let's see, we got it in the bottom. So again, try to remember to leave these tails a little bigger. They'll be coming to your advantage at this part. So you can go ahead and try to retie it again. And that'll help your stem kind of stand up a little bit. I mean, maybe I made the stem a little too long. And then if you got any stragglers like this at the top, just go ahead and work them into the project. I mean, it's easy just to take a crochet hook and weave in any stragglers that you have into, so it's on the inside of the project. And that's how our little stem is on there. So now we end up having a cute little pumpkin hat for a baby or a toddler, depending on how big their head is. So again, you may need to modify this by, you can change out what kind of yarn you want to use, you can change out how many rows you did, given if you need a wider brim or not. But I thought this is a cute little updated way to do a pumpkin hat again. The hardest part is going to be like the stem, just getting it to line up as you want. And it may be, like I said, this one might be a little long, but you can also choose to make it shorter, make it with a spool loom. I mean, there's other ways you can do a little stem and add it to it. So I hope you like this, and again, you know, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell to get notified whenever I do a new video. And if you like this pumpkin hat, make sure you give this video a thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, make sure you head over to my Facebook page for Simply Intertwined. The links are down in the description. And have a great day, everyone.